In this lecture, you'll learn how to create your first database on your RDS SQL Server instance. So the first step is to launch your Management Studio and connect database engine, right? And then specify your connection details, your endpoint, your username, and your password. Then select connect. If you click the plus and expand databases, you'll see the 4 system databases and the RDS admin database which we spoke about earlier. In order to create a database, right click on databases, select new database and specify a name for your database. I'll be calling it AdventureWorks LT. As best practice, it's good to have a owner for your database. However, because this is just the beginning of the tutorial, right, and we don't have any additional users, we're going to keep the owner information as default. So let's expand the screen. So by default, whenever you're creating a database and you specify the database name, SQL Server will generate logical file names. So you have the data file and then you have the log file. So the first file that will be created in the database is called the primary file and is associated with a primary file group. You can set the initial size of your database when you're creating it. So when you're creating your databases, you want to ensure that you have enough space allocated initially, right? So for example, you know that your database is going to be about 10 gigabytes. Then you set your initial size to 10 gigabytes. Because when you do this, your database doesn't have to auto grow a lot, and this will help in performance issue. Because what happens each time is that when your database grows, the database temporarily becomes inaccessible. So it will accept no more new connections when the database is being grown. For the initial size of the transaction log, this again will depend on your environment. If it's a database where you have a lot of transactions taking place, then you want to ensure that your initial log file size is large enough. For the auto growth and maximum size property, you can set if you want your database file to grow by percentage or megabytes. So if you set it by percentage, each time it grows, it will grow by a percentage and that will be different in size. When you set it in megabytes, you'll know exactly by how much your database will grow. So let's say 100 megabyte. When you limit the maximum file size, what you're saying to the SQL Server database is that do not write any data beyond this file size. If your file size reaches maximum file size, and the application is running and you do not allocate another data file, then you'll run into issues. The application will scream at you saying it can't write because it has insufficient space. So for now, I'm just going to limit it to 1000 megabytes because I won't be writing much data in this database. Then select OK. So this is the path where on the server where the files will be stored, you can't change these paths. And for the file name, you don't need to specify a file name because the file name will be automatically generated for you. On the options page, you can set additional options for your database. One option that you want to ensure that is enabled here is auto update statistics, as this will help with performance issues. However, there are so much parameters here to go over, so it's best that you take your time to read over all these parameters on the Microsoft website's documentation. I'll leave a link in the resource section of this video. Once you have satisfied with your database name and database file name, select OK. So the initial parameters you saw were predefined in the model database. However, because RDS is a managed database, you do not have access to modify this database. So if we hit refresh, you should be seeing the AdventureWorks LT database.